Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily News. I'm Nicholas Richardson. The National Health Fund is facing serious financial problems, closing hospital wards, cancelling scheduled appointments, antagonising the medical community, implementing unfavourable changes in rehabilitation and attempting to reduce the number of delivery rooms. One could go on and on. The list of Minister Leszczyna's blunders and healthcare problems is growing. The Law and Justice Party does not want to watch the system collapse any longer. That is why it is submitting a motion of no confidence in Health Minister Izabela Leszczyna. A well-managed healthcare system is able to balance itself, and with the right amount of health contribution, it is really manageable. But the key here is good management. Over the past year, instead of good management of healthcare systems, we see problems piling up. The opposition says enough is enough and demands the resignation of Minister Izabela Leszczyna. The way Minister Leszczyna is acting is very peculiar. It is an attempt to divide the responsibility among different entities, among whole circles. It is an attempt to start quarrels. What we need is a Minister of Health who has a real plan. The financing of the health system leaves much to be desired. The Razem party has criticised next year's draft budget and announced that it will submit an amendment to increase the subsidy to the National Health Fund by an additional 20 billion zloty. The budget lacks at least 20 billion zloty, not to fix the health system, but just to keep it functioning. A budget like the one presented by the government means that thousands of people will need treatment and will be turned away. Problems don't stop there. Starting in January, the Department of Health and Human Services plans to drastically cut access to home rehabilitation. This will affect people with severe disabilities. As of the 1st of January, 400 of the 2,780 facilities that currently provide home rehabilitation under outpatient rehabilitation contracts will be eliminated. The accessibility of home rehabilitation will be drastically reduced. Up to 20,000 physical therapists could lose their jobs and approximately 1 million people could lose access to services. We do not agree with the circumvention of the law from 2018 by the order of the President of the National Health Fund, that is, the actual restriction of the possibility of home rehabilitation by institutions that have a contract for outpatient rehabilitation. Are these changes just another cost-cutting measure to fill the hole in the budget of the National Health Fund? These are foolish savings. In the long run, the financial costs will be much higher. The social costs will be even higher, and the most important thing in all of this is that if we take away this remaining work from physiotherapists, they will leave, take the opportunity, and get employed elsewhere in Europe. Talks with the Ministry of Health and the National Health Fund yielded no results. On the 6th of November, physiotherapists and caregivers of the disabled are organising a protest in front of Parliament. Speculation is rife as to whether Civic Platform MP Ivana Hartwig, who was the face of the protest in Parliament a few years ago, will show up. I was asked by a patient why, in a situation where people with disabilities are being deprived of support, MP Ivana Hartwig is not organising a protest. What will the MP say, and what will she ask Minister Leszczyna in this situation when people with disabilities are deprived of opportunities for ordinary, necessary rehabilitation? There is discontent in the medical community. Nurses are even going on strike. Doctors are outraged by Minister Leszczyna's words about allegedly gigantic salaries. The most worrying thing is that the ministry is playing different groups of medical professions off against each other. On the one side, she gives examples of some exorbitant salaries of doctors, and on the other, she puts the other medical professions who might feel wronged in this situation. Problems in the healthcare system are causing Poles to seek help elsewhere. A study by the Central Statistical Office shows that more and more people are seeking private treatment. One of the reasons is that getting appointments at the National Health Service takes too long. However, private treatment is expensive and not everyone is able to afford it. The economic situation in Poland is not good. A few days ago we learned that the budget deficit will increase by 56 billion zloty to 240 billion zloty this year. However, this is not the end of the bad news, as it turns out that servicing the public debt is getting more and more expensive. The problem is compounded by inflation and the Polish government's failure to make key investments. And all this is reflected in the wallets of Poles.
The economic situation in Poland does not look good. Donald Tusk's budget hole is growing, thanks in part to the strengthening of 10-year government bonds. If their interest rates go up, it's bad for the government, because then the government has to pay a lot more interest. The servicing of public debt alone is expected to cost about 70 billion zlotys, so the increase in bond interest rates is additionally associated with an increase in the cost of servicing. The higher the yield on these bonds, let's not kid ourselves, the more you will have to pay in the future to service the debt. At the beginning of the year, our economy was still viewed positively by investors, who did not anticipate that those in power would contribute to higher inflation. However, the predicted scenario did not materialize, and the increase in energy, gas, and food prices, among other things, contributed to the rise in inflation. So, we asked Poles themselves whether they felt the price increases for basic products. It's expensive, and that's all. Don't tell me about the prices, because I am hit hard. It's been a year since the Civic platform came to power, and it's gotten much worse. Everything is going up. Gas is expensive. As a wise woman once said, it's been cheaper. I think that food is very expensive in Poland. Experts do not doubt that. What is happening now with interest rates on government bonds, for me as an economist, I am very critical of how the Polish economy is developing. The economic situation in Poland has deteriorated recently. Large and key investments such as the Central Communications Port, atomic energy, and the container port have been blocked by the December 13th coalition, which seems to have no idea how to strengthen the Polish economy.
In the Spanish regions of Valencia, Castilla-La Mancha and Andalusia, the search for the missing people continues after flash floods ravaged the region on Tuesday and Wednesday, causing nearly 100 deaths. A 3-day national mourning has been declared in Spain in connection with the tragedy.
Residents of the affected areas have a sense of emptiness, hopelessness, and resignation. The enormity of the destruction and losses frightens even the strongest mentally and physically. But despite the fatigue, cleanup must begin as soon as possible. Yesterday it was full of people, and today it's empty. It's a total desolation. In time, everything will return to normal, you know. But how to survive it? These were terrible days, horrible. We have never experienced this before. I feel very terrible. I've never seen anything like this in my life. Road and rail transportation is paralyzed. Trains and buses are not running. Many flights have been diverted or canceled. Valencia's main access roads are closed. Hundreds of trucks are stuck in parking lots. Since the highway has been cut off by water, they've told us to wait here. We're asking police officers how long it will take, but they don't know anything. We will definitely not move until tomorrow, and in the morning we'll see. The central and regional governments will provide 250 million euros in emergency aid, including 6,000 euros for each person affected, as well as grants to rebuild housing and homes. Stay at home. Listen to the recommendations of the emergency services. We have committed all resources to search for those missing for as long as it is necessary. Meteorologists say that in many places, as much rain has fallen in a few hours as usually falls in a whole year. Nearly 100,000 households remain without electricity. Material damage is difficult to estimate, but it is already known that it will run into billions of euros. Unfortunately, theft has also been reported. Spanish police have arrested 39 people suspected of looting in the affected areas.
Only a few days separate Americans and the world from the most important presidential election in United States history. The latest polls are still not giving answers as to who will win this extremely tight race. All the while, the most important campaign themes are the economy, illegal immigration, but also, unsurprisingly, the topic of garbage.
It might have seemed that nothing would surprise us anymore in the U.S. election campaign. After all, there are only 5 days left. But the truth is that basically every day brings unexpected twists and turns. After U.S. President Joe Biden called Donald Trump's voters garbage, the Republican candidate put on a reflective vest and took off in a garbage truck for another rally.
All right, guys. Joe Biden's comments were the direct result of Kamala's decision to portray everyone who isn't voting for her, which is a lot of people, as evil and subhuman. And we know it's really what they believe, because look at how they've treated you. They treat you like garbage. They treat our whole country like garbage, with open borders, with all of the horrible things they've done to hurt our country.
Biden called Trump's voters garbage after a not-so-funny joke by a comedian at one of the Republicans' rallies, who called Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage. However, it was one thing to make a not-so-funny joke, and quite another to make a completely serious statement by the current president.
The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization of seen as unconscionable, and it's un-American.
According to U.S. mainstream media reporters, after this statement, Biden has been definitively cut off from the media and casual interviews. He is to confine himself to events, but without getting involved in the Democrats' campaign, which he is harming more than helping.
Joe Biden chyba nie do końca zdaje sobie sprawę.
Joe Biden doesn't seem to fully realize how he can ruin Kamala Harris's campaign with his words. In fact, she immediately disassociated herself from those words. Democrats are well aware that at the end of the campaign, this kind of slip-up could lead to a loss of even a few percentage points, because voters should not be called something like that, no matter how fierce the campaign is. Kamala Harris is trying to convince voters in swing states. She is counting on the support of minorities, including the Polish-American community. It is to our compatriots in the United States that she addressed a letter praising the merits of the Polish community and warning against Trump. This is the main axis of the Democrats' narrative in recent days, which mainly focuses on warnings against the Republican candidate.
Here's the thing we know. If he is elected, on day one, Donald Trump would walk into that office with an enemies list. When I am elected, I will walk in with a to-do list.
The problem is that Kamala Harris repeats the same issues over and over again, and the speeches, while long, are lacking in specifics. No one quite knows what her plan is for fighting inflation, illegal immigration, or international policy. No one knows what's on her to-do list. Instead, everyone knows that Taylor Swift and Beyoncé are backing her, and surprisingly, that's enough for many voters to support the Democratic candidate.
That's the news. Thank you for watching, and from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.